Hailing from the Jersey Shore and raised as athletes, the Airey Bros have always shared a passion for physical culture, athletic performance, and human optimization, always striving to be the strongest versions of themselves, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Along the way, they've met some pretty amazing humans and have had some pretty epic adventures. The intention of Airey Bros Radio is to showcase these amazing people and the impact that they've had on them, and to share tips, tricks, and hacks so that you can win each day, every day.
You're listening to Airey Bros Radio. Be there or be square, because it's all killer, no filler.
Stories, creating those connections and engaging with people is all super important. But I'm talking as if like I'm talking to somebody on the other side. I'm talking as if I'm talking to the following that I have, because it's like I'm having a conversation with people, which I like the conversation. I like the discussion. Campbell Wrestling offering a job, I was like, I have to apply for this. This is a job that I need to get. So I did everything in my power to try to apply for the position. And that's a lot of reason why I started on YouTube. Is I think that a lot of wrestling content was kind of geared more towards an older audience. Then Logan Paul announces that he wants to wrestle again, and then boom, I get another huge view because people are searching for Logan Paul wrestling. Like, did he actually wrestle? I've been making videos since I was in elementary school, since in 4th grade. That video ends up always getting a boost and getting more views. I had a green screen that I had got for Christmas to be able to experiment and make videos, and I was doing it on my parents' camera. That's actually where a lot of innovation for like Fanco comes in, is I get ideas from movies, from YouTube movie channels. Crazy to me that people are actually watching me make videos. Like, it was just crazy to me. This is Josiah from Fanco Wrestling, and you're listening to Airey Bros Radio.
What's up, y'all? This is Airey Bros Radio, and this is episode 90 with Josiah from Fanco Wrestling. You ready, Prince?
You kidding me, Richie Rich? We're talking my two favorite things, creating content and wrestling. You better believe I'm ready.
Yo, we had a great conversation with Josiah, talking wrestling, talking creating content, different platforms, talking Campbell Wrestling, Campbell University Sports. My man does it all, and this was a amazing conversation, and I am stoked not only to get Josiah on the line and ask him some serious questions about creating content, but to share that with y'all.
Go Camels. And shout out to our boy Zach Bogle from Stalemates, who hipped us to Josiah when he was down there doing some coverage for Campbell's wrestling season. He said, hey, check out this dude Josiah. He gave me a bunch of good tips. He is the social media and events coordinator at Campbell. So we hit him up and we got to talk all the epic content he creates, some of his strategies behind creating content, and what's it like working at Campbell University.
Yeah, we go all over the place, talk about coming up in PA wrestling for one of the most known high schools in Pennsylvania wrestling, going to Penn State, creating content, getting a job at Campbell, taking over their marketing there, and then also in the process creating Fanco Wrestling and building a juggernaut when it comes to creating wrestling content. So this was a great conversation. Stoked as we're getting into the heat and the heart of wrestling season. And if there's one thing the wrestling community is doing, they're persevering, they're making it work, they're being innovative, and man, always talking about what we can be grateful for here in 2020, heading into 2021. And I am sure glad for all the new wrestling content creators that are out there that are keeping me informed of everything that's going on in the wrestling world in 2020 and beyond.
I double stamped that, Richie Rich. Josiah was the most epic. And if you enjoy this podcast, you enjoy what Josiah is talking to us about, go check out Fanco Wrestling on YouTube. Give them a comment. Tell them the Airey Bros sent you. Also, if you're looking for a new workout plan and you're on a budget, check out Airey Bros on Patreon. We got a monthly workout plan, workout program for you on Patreon. Go check that out. And as always, make sure you rate, review, subscribe. Give us that 5-star on iTunes. Screenshot that. We'll give you some goodies, give you a sticker, give you a shout out on the podcast. And as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Airey Bros Radio.
Yeah, well, when you're done, give our sponsors some love. Click on those links in the show notes. And if Patreon's not up your alley, but you're still getting a value out of this podcast, we're creating a value for value system. So if you feel like you get a little value out of this, you learned something from Josiah, picked up something new about creating content, got a new book, got a new podcast to listen to, you got some value out of it, show us a little love, give us a little value. Click on those Venmo links down there. Buy us a cup of coffee one of these days. Much love. Namaste from the boys of 1512.
Hey, guys.
Josiah, how are you? Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be able to be on here, and I'm just getting everything on my part set up here right now. But yeah, thank you for having me on here. Really appreciate this.
Yeah, want to give Zach Bogle from Stalemates a shout out. He was the one who pointed us in your direction. He said you had some really good tips for him. You are the, I believe, the social media and events coordinator down at Campbell when he was down there. So after we got off with Zach, went and checked your stuff out and was like, oh, we got to talk to this guy and pick his brain on social media, because I see you got quite the presence on YouTube, and you got a Patreon going, and we're starting one of those up. So pleasure to have you on today.
Absolutely. I was able to meet Zach. I had kind of followed his YouTube page even from when he had a couple hundred subscribers, which is kind of cool. Like, it just kind of popped up in my feed. And then I had talked to him a little bit before that, but whenever he was able to come down to visit Campbell, it was like super cool to actually be able to connect and talk with him as well.
Yeah, we got a bunch of specific stuff kind of to touch base with you. Definitely want to get into the Campbell stuff and your journey in wrestling, and if it was wrestling specific that kind of led you to Campbell, or if it was just a career path and then it brought back wrestling back to you. But yeah, we got a whole bunch of cool stuff to get into, both on the wrestling side of things, but then also just content specific sort of questions and fun stuff like that. We kind of run the gamut with our guests from, we're both wrestlers and wrestling fans, so we try to dip into that world. Plus we're Jersey wrestlers, so you know how that is, being from PA. But then we also have we have a lot of people from health and wellness, and lately it seems like too we've been dipping into the alternative media world a little bit too, to shed some light to people with what's going on in our world these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And so are you guys originally from Jersey? Are you guys in Colorado now?
Yeah, we live in Denver now. We were, I've been doing summers out here since 2014 to train for ultra marathons. And then full time I moved here in June of 2017. And then Jimmy moved out here in November of that year. We were living up in Leadville, which is the highest incorporated city in America at 10,200 feet. So great in the summertime for being outdoors and stuff, but Jimmy and I are much more warm weather suited individuals. So having 7 months of winter wasn't necessarily in our mindset. So we decided to come down the hill and be in a little bit more temperate climate here in Denver.
Oh yeah. Trust me, I understand the weather. That's a big reason of why I'm in North Carolina, because I love the warm weather.
Yeah. So where is Campbell in North Carolina specifically? We've had some friends that have gone down there, but we've never, and we always knew that they had wrestling because our friends went there to wrestle. But and you've had some good runners in the past couple of years, some Kenyan imports that have done really well at the NCAA level. So tell us a little bit about Campbell and how you got there.
Yeah, that's right. It's awesome that you know about the runners too. I think that's super cool because there are a lot of great athletes down at Campbell. So the closest city to Campbell that you may know about is Raleigh. And that's actually right. I live right outside of Raleigh. So it's a little bit of a commute to Campbell, but it's nice. It's about 30 minutes south of Raleigh is in Boys Creek. And I mean, the whole Campbell, coming to Campbell, originally from PA, and I actually worked at an ad agency before I moved down to North Carolina in Pennsylvania, great company that I used to work for. But the opportunity kind of came up where I decided that was thinking about moving somewhere else. And I wanted to try something different. And Raleigh, I had visited down here before. Beautiful area. Loved North Carolina whenever I was able to come visit. I had actually visited a couple times. We have some family down here. And so once I visited, it was a super great place. And I had known about Campbell over the last few years from the program that was able to grow because of Coach Colat, because of the great coaches there, Mike Evans, Scotty Sentes. The program has just grown so significantly in the last 5 years. And once I was actually looking for job opportunities down here and in marketing. So I have a marketing degree from Penn State, and that's my field that I was working in. So I was not working in wrestling previously. I had actually been doing some work with my high school team, which that may be a different topic to dive into in a little bit. But as far as like, I wasn't actually doing paid work for wrestling. I'd wrestled growing up, but it was a passion of mine. You know, I love watching college wrestling. And so when I was looking for jobs and I saw Campbell Wrestling offering a job, I was like, I have to apply for this. This is a job that I need to get. So I did everything in my power to try to apply for the position, to try to get the position. And luckily I was able to, in my search, talking to the coaches, you know, able to get that position, secure the position at the school as the social media coordinator, which has grown just into director of social media and really a lot of marketing. It's more than just social media at Campbell, you know, it's more than just putting a picture out or putting a video out. It's a lot of the entire marketing behind the team and the program, which is just it's such a unique position to have in wrestling. You know, you have the kind of position in football, in basketball, in these larger sports. So to be able to have this position in wrestling, which is, you know, it doesn't have that crazy following, the large following that football or basketball has, but Coach Colat and the coaches at the time wanted to see that they kind of saw the value in the position and where it could help the program go. And so being able to come with those coaches, having that mindset, knowing where they wanted the job to go, and me being able to come into it, it was just such a great opportunity. And I'm still loving my job every single day.
That's a beautiful thing.
It absolutely is. And that's something that's important to me. Is I've always said I really want a job that I can love. I mean, I know that's what everybody says, but I'm somebody who would sacrifice, you know, I'm not somebody who wants to work a $300,000 job and hate my life. You know, that's not who I am. I'm somebody who would sacrifice certain things in order to work a job that I love. And luckily I found something that's a great mix of everything. So I like that.
Speaking our language, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Did Fanco come once you went to Campbell, or had you already started that?
So Fanco started actually before Campbell, a few months before. So I started my job at Campbell in, I believe it was May of 2019. And I had started Fanco in January. It was an idea before that, actually. Fanco had kind of been a little bit of an idea before that, but I had launched the actual channel and my YouTube channel and the brand in January of 2019 is how it is, when I guess the timeline is. And
you said with the media position at Campbell and even with Fanco that it's not just posting a picture. There's more that goes into that to build the following. So how do you do that besides, you know, hashtags and timing when you post it? Well, what's the secret to your success to building a following that's there to engage in your content?
I think one of the most important things behind Fanco, behind Campbell, and there's so much that interchanges in the job, you know, like in between these two jobs, is I learned one thing from one job and I can take it into the next job. But a lot of things that comes back to is a story. You know, people want to understand and have a great story, whether it's from a certain wrestler, whether it's about a wrestling fan, which is like a cool story we did at Campbell is with one of our great wrestling fans, and just being able to tell different stories, I think is extremely important. And also just being able to connect with people. You know, I think too many brands, they just kind of put random generic things out there without connecting directly to a person. So I think really connecting to a person is another thing that's really important to me. Is I'm not just talking like I'm talking. It may have started out like this, but like when I'm doing YouTube videos, I don't act like I'm just talking to a camera, and it's definitely weird. Like it's definitely something that gets, it's tough to get used to at first. But I'm talking as if like I'm talking to somebody on the other side. I'm talking as if I'm talking to the following that I have, because it's like I'm having a conversation with people, which I like the conversation. I like the discussion. And I think people want to feel that. They want to be able to feel like they're a part of something big. And that's where, you know, I say that Fanco and Campbell, that there's a lot in common there, is because with Fanco, they're wrestling fans that want to feel like they're a part of the conversation. Like, what is going on with Nick Serrano? What's going on with Dayton Fix? Like this and that. What's going to happen in this dual meet? They want to feel like they're a part of the conversation. And same with Campbell, you know, they want to feel like they are a part of the program, because they are. You know, the truth is they are. They may not be in the room every single day, but they're still following what's going on. So I think stories, creating those connections and engaging with people is all super important.
And what's the landscape of the fans like in Campbell for the wrestling community? Is it, I know with Coach Kolak coming in, you know, he brings a lot of notoriety and gets people fired up. If we were to come down to maybe not in COVID times, pre-COVID times, or maybe when we get through all this nonsense, what's the environment like for fans coming into a Campbell wrestling match?
Oh, it's super exciting. And I think the cool thing is, I mean, we have a couple of gyms that we're able to use at Campbell, but my favorite gym that we're able to wrestle on is Carter, it's an older gym, but the stands get packed and people drive in from all across the state to be able to watch these big matches, especially matches with Campbell versus App State, Campbell versus Chattanooga, these huge matches that are big SoCon rivalries and really are some of the biggest rivalries in wrestling, where because a lot of these programs, because the SoCon's a little bit smaller than some, like a Big 10 or a Big 12 or whatever, some people may not know about these type of rivalries, but I'm telling you, they're just as big. And when you look at the fans, you know, I'm on the floor, I'm doing my marketing and everything, but like, you can just feel tension in there as soon as you walk in, with Campbell fans yelling, parents yelling, their fans yelling. And it's not just something that starts, you know, that day. It's something that's kind of built up all week with, this is the match to look forward to this week. And this is what we're putting all our attention to. And as far as, you know, I'm just talking about the fans here, you know, they are super into these rivalries, and it's something that's grown in recent years and something that I really love. And, you know, being a part of, I've been to some big matches. I've been to like the Iowas and the Penn States, the Penn State, Ohio States, these type of matches where they're super thrilling. And this is just as thrilling to me. You know, just because it's a smaller school means nothing. It means the stakes are just as high. Yeah,
for sure. You know, we grew up in a small town, and there's another small town right next door. It was our crosstown rivalry. And, you know, those once a year dual meets were hyped up and tickets were sold in advance, and it was standing room only, and the energy is just amazing. And with that, I've also had the opportunity to take in, say, like Oklahoma State versus Iowa. And I wouldn't say I was let down, but I was kind of like, all right, I've experienced this before. So I guess totally relate and see where you're coming from, is that these smaller schools, but they have their own fan bases, and maybe because there isn't a lot of other stuff going on in the town or in the community, it's like, this is our Friday night or this is our Sunday afternoon. And we're all coming out in droves to see it. And I think that's what makes our sport so special, is that it doesn't always have to be Iowa, Oklahoma State, or Penn State, Iowa to get these huge rambunctious crowds. You know, it can be a App State and a Campbell on a Friday night that's just going to blow the roof off the place. And that's what our sport needs. And, you know, the other thing we're trying to do too is bring some spotlight to schools like Campbell, or, you know, we did some stuff with Northern Colorado last year. Mm-hmm. So kids from New Jersey realize that, it's not all about the Power 5 schools. Is that you can go to a Campbell and be an All-American or NCAA champion, or Northern Colorado. And it's not, Iowa City, I'm sure, is a great place, but there's a lot of other great places where, like we said, you might not have to deal with winter, and you can, I think you guys, it was either last year or the year before, you had an outdoor dual meet and you did some outdoor practices that I saw. Like, that's the kind of stuff the young kids, high school kids, need to see. And that's what gets them interested.
It's and outdoor dual meets are super, super cool. I remember being in high school and actually it may have been, I was in college and saw Cal Poly doing that. I think it was Cal Poly and Stanford. They did that. And I was like, this is super cool. And the cool thing is, Coach Sentes, it was actually one of the, I guess, innovators behind like in big push guys who kept pushing for an outdoor dual meet, because he was at Cal Poly at the time, did a lot of the outdoor dual meets, came to Campbell and was like, well, we can do it here too. Why not? And it's super cool to be able to do those outdoor dual meets. And the dual meet that we had was actually our wrestle off. So we had it during homecoming weekend, and, we would have done this. We'd had the wrestle off this year, but it was different. We didn't do it outside because of COVID things. But during like a normal year, when we have this outside during the homecoming parade, we have a giant parade going around us. We have fans just of just Campbell, Campbell University. They're like, oh, what's going on over here? And they're able to check that out. They're able to see a cool outdoor wrestling match. Plus our regular fans, super fun environment. It's one of the most, it's honestly one of the most cool things that I've seen in wrestling.
Yeah. And obviously the outdoor stuff came before, but you see a lot of people having to innovate now. And, some of these mainstream sports aren't necessarily on my menu, but as a wrestling fan, the content that we've been able to consume, they really haven't missed a beat and have gotten better in terms of content. And, guys like Zach have been able to come to the forefront. They started pretty much right around when all this started, and all of a sudden he's one of the guys now. He's in the forefront in terms of creating content and fun content, different and unique. And let's cover Twitter beefs and people get into that stuff. So I think
Absolutely.
It's great, and we're always just trying to focus on the positive and the good things that are coming out of these situations right now.
Absolutely. And I think, and I've said it before, and I still really, truly believe that, there's a lot of bad things that came out of COVID and are still coming out of COVID, but there's a lot of good stuff too. A lot of good innovation and not, I guess it's some side effects of COVID. Because of having no sports and wrestling for a couple months, we defined some other ways to do things, and that's what a lot of these new wrestling companies. And even outside of wrestling, a lot of new businesses are starting because they're cooped up inside and they have these great ideas, and now they can maybe they lost their job, but now they can finally react to them and actually go after that and pursue that. And I think with wrestling specifically, it's just been such a massive change in the last year, especially with a lot of these freestyle events, with a lot of the flow cards and a lot of things going on with Rockfin. It's really cool things that I think we'll see continue to grow. And that came out of this year. That's a great thing that did come out of this year. And that is a great innovation in wrestling.
Yeah. And we've seen a few iterations of like professional wrestling leagues, kind of do that dual meet format and just never really hit, or funding wasn't there. But now, like you said, Rockfin and track wrestling, some of these flow, all these different things now, and the RTC Cup, like it's almost a legitimate thing where we might actually see a successful pro wrestling endeavor that may have some longevity and get some legs and change the sport for sure.
For sure. And the thing too with that is, like, now that these athletes are being able to get paid with these type of events, and with college athletes in the upcoming year being able to pay for their name, image, and likeness, I think we may, and it's with even more brand deals kind of happening, I think we're going to see some potential changes in wrestling. I don't think it's there quite yet, but I think we are going towards something like that.
And you had mentioned last year you guys did wrestle-offs outside, and this year really couldn't have that because of the current condition. But I don't know whose idea it was to bring Zach down and have him cover the wrestle-offs, but I just thought that was great because you usually get the standard Flow coverage, and not that that's bad. I enjoy Flow. I grew up on it, but to see someone kind of bring some comic flair to it and have fun with the kids and actually pop the kids as he's asking them questions and making them laugh. I thought that was great. Whose idea was that to bring Zach in, and what did Campbell think of the coverage he provided?
Oh, it was, I mean, you're straight on. Like and that's what Zach kind of told us as he was coming in, is he didn't want to provide like the just straight up interview right after a guy's done wrestling. He wanted to do something different, and he absolutely did, which is super fun. We loved it. We loved what he did. And we thought he brought something so different and was able to like show the guys' personalities. And I think that kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, you know, with stories and getting to know guys. And he was able to do that. And really that him and the whole event, it was kind of a whole total team effort in spitballing ideas, you know, kind of in the back room, I think is what all of that is, you know, being able to say, okay, we want some sort of wrestling personality to come. Zach would be great because he's doing something different in wrestling right now. Let's find a way to get him in. You know, we had a lot of these ideas. Some of them made their way to light. Some of them didn't. But you know, the whole wrestle off this year was just it was such a new, I don't want to say it's a new innovative thing, like, but having it on Facebook Live was definitely something different. We haven't really seen programs doing it on Facebook Live before, and being able to engage with all of our fans like that was something different. And that's like just an innovation that came out of Campbell. And that's what a lot of, you know, at Campbell specifically, you know, with my job is being able to spitball with all of these coaches I love that because everybody's bringing different ideas. You know, all the creative behind Campbell Wrestling isn't just coming from, you know, my brain. It's coming from Coach Sanchez. It's coming from Coach Darryl. It's coming from Coach Wynn or, you know, whoever else is behind the scenes. These are neat ideas. And that was definitely one of our favorite parts of the wrestle off was Zach's commentary on the whole thing.
Yeah. And you mentioned the live streaming on Facebook. Is that something you're going to do moving forward for the dual meets and that sort of stuff, especially now with who knows if fans are going to be allowed to spectate and whatnot?
Yeah, we have looked into that, and we've done something. We have put it live on Facebook and Instagram before, not to the extent that we did the wrestle off. Like we had the wrestle off with full commentary with great different angles. Like we had a lot of that for the wrestle off, which we hadn't had for the matches before. And a lot of it will kind of depend on like the university's contracts with different things between ESPN Plus. If we're able to, I'll say it's definitely an option that we are pursuing because it gets the fans excited. It gives fans something to watch, and it's free. You know, it's free content to be able to watch on Facebook.
And as a wrestler coming up, and you went to Penn State and, you know, worked for a marketing firm, I know you said building stories behind what you're posting and engaging with people, but was there anything before you started with Campbell or with Fanco that you thought wrestling was really missing out on, the way they presented stories or stuff that you're like, oh, if I ever have the opportunity to work with wrestlers, this is what we're going to do?
I think so. I think, and that's a lot of reason why I started on YouTube is I think that a lot of wrestling content was kind of geared more towards an older audience. And I did want to talk more directly to like the high schooler or the junior high wrestler who wants to know what's going on in college. Because I think back on like whenever I was in high school and I was looking for wrestling content, there was nothing like Fanco on YouTube. There wasn't, you know, I don't even remember if Flow was really on YouTube back whenever I was in high school. Obviously, you know, I've watched all the Flow stuff growing up, and the change in their company has been crazy watching them grow from the time I was in middle school until now. But back in whenever I was in high school, there was really nothing like that where people were just discussing wrestling for an understanding. And that's the other thing too, that I think is kind of, I don't want to say wrong, but different, is that too many people are too high end, I guess, where I don't understand all these things that are going on. As a high school, I don't know all the ins and outs of every little thing. And you're kind of expected to know that when you're listening to certain shows or programs, and it's built for those type of people. But I wanted to talk more to the people who I wanted to explain things to them, let them understand, because for me, that's not just, getting those people in. Now they're actually able to help their friends understand and say, hey, watch Fanco Wrestling. They actually explain more of what's going on in college to help the average Joe understand. I have friends who had never even watched wrestling, didn't really care about wrestling. Maybe they went to a wrestling match of mine and that was it. But then they actually started watching my YouTube channel and they're like, this is actually pretty cool. I actually like following wrestling and understanding that. So because of that, all of that was kind of in my head whenever I started Fanco, because I wanted to talk to the general fan that doesn't know every single little detail about, who guys had wrestled. I want to be able to explain that to them.
Yeah, and before we got on here, I was going through some of your videos, and one of your most popular ones, you break down Logan. I'm forgetting his name right now.
Logan Paul.
You break down Logan Paul's wrestling career, and we always hear about it, right? That he wrestled or whatever, but you kind of go and you follow him through high school. He wrestled, I believe it was a kid from Michigan State or University of Michigan, and that was like his embarrassing loss in high school, and you cover that. Did you have a particular video that the light bulb went off and you thought you were onto something, or was that it?
That was, I'll tell you, that was definitely one of them. And that there's a lot of funny stories behind that video, but I wanted to talk about wrestlers that, I guess, famous wrestlers, that you may know them from one thing, like Logan Paul. You know him as the Vine star, the YouTube star, whatever. He's famous for multiple things, good and bad. And I wanted to kind of show, yeah, exactly. So, which is funny. I watched him whenever I was in high school on Vine, and he was going to supermarkets in a singlet. Yeah. And so that's kind of how I knew that he was a wrestler. And then so I did some more digging into that. I found out he wrestled Abinator. He wrestled the guy from Michigan, and that was the embarrassing loss. And that video, it was definitely one of those moments, or I guess one of those ideas that I had was this could be kind of cool. And I've seen videos like that take off, and they have taken off because of multiple reasons. But one of them is because people were searching for Logan Paul. And every time, he's had some big events come up over the last month, or he'll say something about wrestling, or he'll call somebody out in wrestling, say he wants to have a wrestling match with somebody, or box somebody in wrestling, whatever. Well, then that video ends up always getting a boost and getting more views. It's funny to watch. I'm a big analytical guy, big statistical guy. So I like looking into all this stuff. And so when it first released, the chart goes way high, a lot of views. Then it kind of teeters off a little bit over time. Still gets a few. Then Logan Paul announces that he wants to wrestle again. And then boom, I get another huge view because people are searching for Logan Paul wrestling. Did he actually wrestle? And that video comes up. And then from there, I've actually done a couple other videos on famous wrestlers. I've done a Chris Pratt one of my favorite actors, definitely right now. I recently did one of Abraham Lincoln, because I thought, this was an election year is a good year to look back on ex-president wrestlers, and Abe Lincoln is one of those. So that was kind of a cool one. And that's definitely one of those ideas that I had it's different. I always like to find different ways to experiment, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. I like talking about the news and what's going on in wrestling, but I always like to find a different way to talk about that. And the famous wrestlers is one idea that I had that's kind of like that it's different. People don't know about it, but it's kind of fun, and it's also shareable, which is a huge thing in creating content, is being able to create shareable content. Maybe you don't know that, maybe you know about Logan Paul, but you didn't know he wrestled, or you don't even care about wrestling, but you're like, he wrestled, let me watch this video. So that creating shareable content is just another huge thing for me.
And in your research, who is the most famous former wrestler?
I honestly think one of the most famous former wrestlers is Abe Lincoln. I think just his whole story is super cool. There are a couple other guys that I think I have. Tom Cruise used to wrestle.
Jersey Wood Glen Ridge, New Jersey.
Yeah, so there we go. Yeah, Tom Cruise is a big one. I think Neil deGrasse Tyson. He wrestled. There are a couple that have come to mind, and even more presidents. Like more presidents have wrestled than you'd really think had wrestled. But Abe Lincoln's definitely one of my favorite famous wrestlers, and one I think is the biggest.
Interesting. I wonder if Neil deGrasse Tyson is one of the more famous people that kind of elevated, because I'm pretty sure he wrestled at Harvard too.
Yeah.
So he, there's a guy that not only was successful in high school, but actually went on to the next level, the collegiate level, and wrestled. Be curious to see, because I know Billy Baldwin, he's been a big proponent of Sonny Binghamton, and he was pretty influential in making sure that program got reinstated. And he's always gets a 5-minute clip at the NCAAs every year they interview him. So it's good to see that. You
got Fanco, and obviously working at Campbell. At what point did you realize with Fanco that, hey, maybe I can make some profit off of this and start at the Patreon? And how have you kind of handled that, and how you make content for that?
Sure. So I think before starting Fanco, I even have to go back a couple months for this story to even make a lot of sense. So I am somebody who I've been making videos since I was in elementary school, since in 4th grade. I was using the Windows Movie Maker or whatever the software was back then. I had a green screen that I had got for Christmas to be able to experiment and make videos. And I was doing it on my parents' camera. I was doing it growing up. I'd do it on my phone or whatever I had. I wasn't somebody who had all the fancy camera equipment. And I never was. Even when I started the channel, I was not somebody who, my first videos for the first year were on my phone. I filmed on my phone, filmed with a lavalier mic, and that was it. But so I've been making videos growing up, experimenting, doing things, throwing different videos onto YouTube. You'll find some old funny ones of me if you just search for my name. But I had actually I decided that 2018, I wanted to start my own YouTube channel. And another passion of mine, big passion of mine, is movies. I love watching movies. I love talking about movies, reviewing movies. And that's actually where a lot of innovation for like Fanco comes in, is I get ideas from movies, from YouTube movie channels. So I had started my own channel there, and I was putting out like maybe one video a week and getting a couple, I would get excited. I'd get 50 views. I would celebrate that. I'd be excited that I was able to get 50 views, and every single comment that somebody posted, I would respond to. And it was just crazy to me that people are actually watching me make videos. Like, it was just crazy to me. So then I'd get a couple hundred views or whatever it was. I think my most viewed one had like 10,000 or something, but like most of mine were within a couple hundred views. And I was like, I like this, but I feel like this space is just too filled up. And I think that there's still ways to innovate in that space, but like, I was like, I don't know. And then I had the idea, I was like, what if I did a YouTube wrestling channel? Like I always kind of had that thought in the back of my mind. And then I started searching on YouTube for like wrestling videos. And really the only thing coming up was Flow Wrestling. I'm like, if they're the only people coming up, like there has to be something different. And listen, there were a couple other different people, but Flo was the main one. They still are a huge content creator on YouTube. But I said, why not start wrestling on YouTube? So I started it, and like I said, on my phone. And then I realized my first couple videos, I think my second video maybe got more views than every single other video that I had on my other YouTube channel. I was like, okay, there's something special here. And within the first month and a half, I jumped to like 1,000 subscribers. I went from like 50 subscribers a week to 100 to 500 to 1,000. That by the time the NCAA tournament came, I maybe had within 1,000 or 2,000 subscribers, my channel was able to actually be monetized by the time the NCAAs came around, which was like peak time for that to happen. And that's kind of when I realized, I was like, this can be something special. And from there, it's finding different ways to monetize and to create different revenue streams, because you're not just going to make a living off of YouTube ad revenue. and very little content creators do that unless they have millions of subscribers, which you're not going to get millions of subscribers in wrestling. And I knew that going in, that was never my goal. And really the views and everything is still just a vanity metric to me. It's cool. It's cool for other people to see that, but like subscribers, it's a vanity metric. The views, vanity metric, doesn't really matter as much to me. So whenever I'm able to get these, get loyal fans, that was the other thing, is I started curating loyal fans that I really started realizing these people are engaging with my videos. They're commenting on it. They're excited. And I started seeing the same names over and over, many of the same names. And over time, I found that I was able to launch this Patreon page. And it's not something I wanted to do right away because I didn't, I think with a lot of these revenue streams, you don't want to be a sellout because, there's always people that you're a sellout if you try to make money. No, I'm not. I'm trying to make a living for myself. Like there's not anything wrong with trying to make money. Like I understand some things can be a sellout, but trying to make money off your content, it's not being a sellout. It's me trying to be a businessman. So with the Patreon content, I just realized that I'm able to really engage with my most active subscribers and the people who actually want to put their dollars behind me. And which is like, it still blows my mind to this day that there are people who want to put their money behind me and are able to support me. And the content on there is different in that I don't release I release the same content that I would on my YouTube channel. This is just additional extra content. It's more behind the scenes. I show matches of whenever I was in high school, like whenever I wrestled Michael Kemmerer or Bryce Meredith. I actually wrestled those guys in high school. So I show those matches, do some commentary on it. I talk more about like the behind the scenes of the studio. I give them like a studio tour, show them everything that's kind of set up here and what certain things mean on these shelves. I talk about like just regular updates in the channel, what they can expect in the channel going forward. So it's different content, but it's still really interesting. And it's more like personal because I found that like a lot of people, they really like the channel, but they wanted to know more about me as a person. And they want to know about me personally, which I didn't really care to talk about myself that much on YouTube. It's just not really how I am. I didn't necessarily think I was that crazy interesting to be able to talk about, and it's not where my content is themed. So it's different content, it's a great revenue stream for me, but it's also a great way to engage with those fans. And I've learned some great things about them and about my channel through them. And that's what I'm always trying to do. It's continue to learn, to grow and improve.
Love it. We've been friends, or we've known Scott Goodell for a very long time, long before he took over the program at Rutgers. And when he did take over the program at Rutgers, one of the most impactful things I think I've ever heard him say was, good or bad, they're still talking about you. So haters are going to hate. And if you want to call us a sellout or call you a sellout, like so be it. But like you said, at the end of the day, I'm just trying to put food on my table and keep a roof over my head. And if that means doing these sorts of things, I'm going to do it. I'm not a sellout. I'm just doing what I love, and I want to continue to do it so that I don't necessarily have to take another job or something just to provide that source of income.
And the thing too that I do want to say is like the response, because I had this was like a couple months long plan that I was trying to create in order to launch it in a positive way. And the response to it was just so extremely positive. It's so overwhelmingly positive. Like, you go, Josiah, or I'm not going to support on Patreon just because I don't have the money to, which I totally understand. But I still want to keep, supporting on YouTube. So good luck with that. Keep going. I'm going to keep commenting. I'm going to even comment even more on the video, whatever it was, or yeah, I'm going to come support you. So it was overwhelmingly positive. You're always going to have some negativity, but it's just how you react to it. And I'm good with those criticisms. It never bothers me. I may have one comment come up every now and then that I'm like, oh, I just have to roll my eyes at, but you got to react to those things in those certain ways, even if they are talking bad, like you said. Yeah.
And that's, Tim Ferriss 101, when you have people that are engaging in a negative aspect, he just said, suffocate it. You know what I mean? Don't acknowledge it, and then it goes away. But as soon as you engage in a negative comment, then it turns into, 3 days worth of back and forth. And it just, end of the day, you end up maybe losing sleep over. So always engage on the positive stuff and just kind of let the negative stuff roll off your back and don't comment on it. You mentioned, you wrestled with Bryce Meredith in high school. And so I think we'd be remiss if we didn't get into it, but I think for most people, whenever they're ranking the top 5 high school wrestling states, it's hard pressed not to put Pennsylvania on the top of the podium there. Did you come out of the womb with the headgear like a lot of kids in Pennsylvania do, or was it something that you kind of found accidentally? Or how did you get into wrestling? And tell us a little bit about your wrestling career.
Sure. So I started wrestling late for PA, which is like 4th grade is when I actually started. So, most people they start late. It's in high school, but for PA, I started late. It was in 4th grade. And my dad had always been trying to, I shouldn't say he's tried to get me to start, but he'd take me to different wrestling matches to watch. He'd take me to the Powerade tournament since that's held at our high school. And so I always kind of liked it. My dad wrestled. He wrestled growing up. My dad's dad, I believe, wrestled. So we come from like a long wrestling family. In my high school, the area we're in, we come from, not only is PA one of the, biggest wrestling states, but then I'm from the Whippeal, which is, one of the biggest parts of wrestling in PA. And then I come from Cannon-McMillan, which is one of the most historic programs in Pennsylvania public schools. So like if you're from PA, about Cannon-McMillan High School, and it's a program that's been around for over 90 years, which is crazy. So it was kind of destined for me to eventually wrestle. And so I got into it growing up, 4th grade, ended up wrestling through high school. Kind of cool. I was always I was always part of great wrestling teams. My team was 2-time state champs in high school. I think from the time growing up, from the time I started until my senior year of high school, our teams lost like 2 dual meets. So, which is like, crazy. And I always had great wrestlers around me. Whether I was above or below me, wherever, all around me, I had guys go D1. Connor Schramm went to Stanford. We had Cody Weirchalk, who was a great high school wrestler. Had one of my favorite high school wrestling matches against Chance Marsteller at the Powerade wrestling tournament. We also had Solomon Chisko, who went to Virginia Tech. Coach Shorts, who went to Cal Poly. So I just had all these guys around me that were just great motivators and great teammates. And I enjoyed wrestling growing up. I enjoyed being a part of those teams, wrestling on those teams. And so, yeah, my journey, I guess, stopped at my senior year of high school. I decided that, I had looked at schools for wrestling. I had looked at D2, D3. I had looked at one D1 I had actually toured Davidson, which it's funny because it's actually in the SoCon and it's right, down in where I am now, around where I am now. But I decided not to kind of pursue those routes because I wanted to focus more on my education. And I knew that I knew I wasn't a D1 athlete. I think that was a distinction for me. Like I could wrestle D2 or D3 and be pretty good, but I would rather focus on my education. I would rather go to Penn State and, get that education and see great wrestling, go to the football games, like all that stuff, than wrestle in college. And for me, like it was a hard choice. It was a hard choice to do that whenever I see all these guys on my team going D1 and just doing great things. But it ended up turning out fine. I have no regrets, not wrestling in college. I think it just would have been a different avenue for me. I really don't have many regrets in life because I try to go after everything, but I enjoyed my wrestling career while I had it, and I'm so glad that I'm still in wrestling now.
Hell yeah. You mentioned the Powerade tournament. In your years of competition and taking place in the Powerade tournament, did you ever come across the wrestler from Southern Regional in New Jersey?
Not
bracket?
Not that I can think of. I bet you if you ask my dad, he's more of the statistical guy for all. He has, Excel sheets of all the guys I've wrestled and everything. So he'd be the guy to ask. So I bet you I had to have at some point. I would guarantee it, but not off the top of my head.
All right. And then another callback, mentioning Southern Regional again. Were you at Penn State when Frank Molinaro was there?
I was not there. So I graduated in, I'm trying to think of when Molinaro graduated. I graduated Penn State in 17.
Yeah, I think he graduated in 2012, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember watching him in high school, but I don't think he was ever there whenever I was in college. I started 2014. So I think it was before my time.
So you were there all for Cal.
Yes. But I did go to a camp where I believe he was at. So that was pretty cool to be able to do that.
Yeah. Jimmy grew up wrestling with Frankie, and I was helping out. I coach wrestling as well. And I say this to this day, Frank Molinaro is the strongest 7th grader I've ever wrestled with. And real funny story with Frank. If you guys don't know who Frank Molinaro is, just do a quick little Google search and you'll see his career in 2016 Olympian. But Frank Molinaro was in 7th grade. It was the week leading into the New Jersey High School State Wrestling Tournament. And Jimmy and I watched Frank beat the snot out of a 112-pounder who placed the year before and then would go on to place that year as well. But in that week leading up to the state tournament, Frank Molinaro, as a 7th grader, made a high school senior cry because he was beating him so bad.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's too funny. He was a strong guy for sure.
Strong and fast. He'd get a hold of you, and then the next thing you know, you're like, where'd he go? And I remember because I was a 3 and 12 pounder in high school, and I looked like your typical 3 and 12 pounder at 5'7", and I remember him telling me, at practice, I deadlifted 400 pounds today, and being in high school, not being able to comprehend what he was saying, like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not possible.
Yeah, exactly. That's nuts. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no lie. When I would always dread like going round robin or stuff, or he would be in a group as a 7th and an 8th grader. I'd just be like, I'm a man and this dude is terrifying. Like, he was so strong as a 7th and 8th grader. So to see him go and do what he did at Penn State and then later, make the Olympic team and stuff is just phenomenal. So
it's unbelievable. And I love looking back on things like that, where, you look at an old bracket and you'll see him floating around Twitter every now and then of like all these tough guys in like a 7th or 8th grade bracket that end up making it like real big now. It's just, it's so cool to see like where they came or who they won and lost to, or even like in some cases, like how much weight they've gained and how big they are now, like how Michael Kemmerer is somebody who, he was like 100 some pounds in high school, like 103 pounds, like maybe freshman year of high school, jumped up to 126. And now where he's wrestling, like, I'm like, I still can't believe how big he is. And so I love seeing stories like that with, guys like Frank Molinaro and somebody you knew, growing up and watching wrestle and seeing what he ended up becoming was super cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jimmy, you could correct me if I'm wrong, try to cut you off, but I think when Frank won his first state title, he beat Jordan Burroughs.
That's what I was going to say.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. So there you go. Like things like that. It's just so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Josiah, I got to give you dabs for your decision, realizing when it was time to go to college that it might not be right. You can wrestle in college, but you want to go for the education. I think that's a really mature decision. And I think that's a problem with a lot of wrestlers is, kids put themselves in debt to wrestle D2, D3 so they can wrestle and not really think about the college hope. That's a super mature decision to make at 18. And one thing I wanted to ask you when you were talking about creating content, do you storyboard or do you just kind of do it off the fly as you're making videos, or do you kind of have an outline of what you want to do and that's how you do it? Yeah,
sure. So thanks for that. I mean, it was before I get to the storyboarding. Yeah. Like that was a tough decision. Like I may have kind of skidded over that a little bit, but like that was not an easy decision. And it took a lot of time and thinking on my own. And I remember like I do remember those weeks of thinking about those things. And yeah, I mean, looking back at it now, like it is a mature decision. And I appreciate that. Like there are different pros and cons for every single wrestler. And that's why, you know, if you are a wrestler listening to this, like think about everything that there is out there, you know, think about whether you want to wrestle or not want to wrestle. That is still a valid decision. And there's still other great ways to wrestle. You know, you could wrestle for a club. You could get back into wrestling like I have. You know, I'm not wrestling right now, obviously, but I'm still able to enjoy the sport. But, and I would also encourage those who it is their passion is to find a good way to go about doing that, you know? But as far as storyboarding, yeah. So everything, my process, like, there's a lot that goes behind my process before I click record. I'm not somebody who just, I don't really just click record ever. I do storyboard a lot. First thing that comes to mind, you know, first I come up with a bunch of different ideas. So I have an entire list of like maybe 50 to 100 ideas at a time that I want to do. Some of them make it to air, some of them don't. And then from those ideas, I'll pick one out. I'll start researching it, make sure it's a valid option of a video to do. I think, you know, sometimes I think, am I interested in this? Yes. But are other people interested in this? Yes. Or maybe not. This just gets scrapped. And that happens sometimes. And so once I actually get this idea down, an idea that I know I'm actually going to make a video about, I research it heavily. And I you know, kind of outline everything that I want to do. I come up with the title before I even put the video out there. Even as I'm coming out with the video idea, I come up with a title for YouTube. I make my thumbnails beforehand. I make all my graphics beforehand. That way, whenever I'm ready, like I have everything ready. And then once I hit record, I'm recording and I know exactly what I'm doing. I upload it and I have it with the title in mind. So I kind of do all the prep work beforehand, and that kind of helps me. It helps me in the long run to know exactly what I want to get out of a video and where I'm going with it.
Two questions. One, how did your dad handle you not wrestling in college? Was he okay with it?
Yeah, he was okay with it. He's somebody who I talked to through all of these moments, and he, you know, my dad is a great guy, and he had always motivated me, and he wasn't a crazy wrestling dad. He's always pushed me to be the best person I can be. And you know, he's definitely, you know, we've had our moments whenever I was wrestling, but he was never, somebody who was screaming at me or at anything. He would criticize me, critique me where I needed it. But whenever it came time to that decision to not wrestle in college, and I was nervous. I was nervous. I was like, is my dad going to be upset at me? And sure, I'm sure he would have liked to see me wrestle in college, but he was totally fine with it. And he was happy to be able to come up to Penn State for the football games and the wrestling matches too.
Awesome. And then when it comes to creating content, start to finish, are you a one-man show or do you have some other people that are helping you out as well?
I've been a one-man show from the beginning. It's a team that, looking into 2021, it's something that I do want to grow. And that's kind of where I'm going with the future of the channel. But right now, yeah, it's a one-man show. I do my own graphics. I do my own editing. I do my own storyboarding, researching. I do it all on my own, and it's something I enjoy, you know, every step of the way. But it's definitely, it's a lot to handle too, you know.
So then my third follow-up question to that is, with your job at Campbell and with Fanco, when do you sleep?
Hardly ever. Hardly ever. And luckily for me, I'm somebody who I know it's bizarre to say, I don't like sleeping. Like, I do not like sleeping. I would rather be working or doing something than in bed. I get the bare minimum that I have to in order to stay healthy and do everything that I need to that way. But like, yeah. And even when I'm sleeping, like, I'll tell you, 2 weeks ago, I could not get to bed because I just was having a brainstorm session as I was falling asleep. And it was the worst time to have all these ideas flowing into my head. But like, I couldn't get to bed because I was probably up for 2 hours just thinking. And then I eventually had to write everything down on my phone and then put it all in the paper the next day. But oh my goodness. Yeah. It's a blessing and a curse, I guess.
Yeah, it's important when you have those moments. So like you said, to either have your phone or have a notepad or a notebook by the bed so you can write those down, because inevitably some of my best ideas were things that I'll be like, oh, I'll remember that and write it down in the morning. And then inevitably you don't even like, what was that? What was I thinking last night? Like, oh man, I blew it.
Let me ask you. So I get like ideas in like the craziest places, you know, like I said, in bed, or a lot of times I'll get ideas. I run a lot to exercise. So I get ideas on my runs or in the shower or on the toilet, whatever, you know, I get crazy. Is there somewhere where either you guys have got like a crazy idea or whenever you're thinking of things?
I'm a runner as well. I do ultra marathons. So inevitably at times when I'm at high elevation or different things and, you know, oxygen is thin and weird ideas pop into my head, I'll pull my phone out and get out my notebook and write stuff down there. Also here living in the city, there's lots of cool different inspirational art and stuff like that. So different things, you know, pop in like, oh, how could I use that? Or, you know, so I'm always on my runs taking photos of the art and stuff like that. And again, lately I've been really trying to focus my posts on engagement. Like, how can I get people to engage and like have this, you know, it's great. So some people have these huge thought out posts about all kinds of stuff, but at the end of the day, if I read this post and there's nothing, like there's not a leading question at the end of it, it's like, you're not getting the engagement from me. So that's really what I've been trying to focus on lately is how can I create a post or how can I use this post to get a couple people to comment so that I can start a dialogue with them. That's kind of what I've been focusing on. And really what my focus is going to be for 2021 is really trying to get as much engagement as possible from my posts.
Absolutely. I mean, that's something that's huge for me. I totally agree with everything you said. You know, people can have these, and you see it all the time with people. They have these long paragraphs about everything, and maybe it's an interesting story, but like, nobody comments. And then you know, I think that's where I'm always trying to think of too is how can I get people to comment? What can I say? How can I phrase something? What gets different people to comment? And the more that people comment and that you're able to like interact with them, then you learn even more about your audience then and who they are is because they're actually commenting and engaging their thoughts.
Totally. I feel like the likes, especially like on Instagram, the likes are just generated by what they see, but the engagement is what's really more important. So I'd be more stoked on a post that has 10, 15 comments as opposed to a couple hundred likes.
You know, for sure. For sure. Yeah. I honestly I don't even pay attention to likes because of that. You know, it's cool. And again, like I said earlier, it's a vanity metric. Like people are like, oh, Josiah, we got, or Josiah, I see your post has 500 likes or 1,000 likes. I'm like, cool. But like, I'm more like, oh, I got 50 comments. Like, that's cool. Like, that's cool to me.
Yeah.
And it's more important too. Like it really.
Totally.
Yeah, the light bulb moment for me was I was listening to a Gary V podcast and he was talking about when people comment on your post and if you don't comment back, like you're the worst. Like you need to combat back and engage. And I have a pro wrestling podcast and one of my projects for my digital effects class was, you know, let us know a little bit about yourselves. This is a self-expression project. So do something that the class is going to learn more about. So I did my Mount Rushmore pro wrestling and I had 30 comments on it. And it was just, this is my Mount Rushmore pro wrestling. Who's on yours? And then it just came in. And that's when the light bulb moment for me. And as far as ideas, I get ideas from conversations like this, talking to someone like you, who's just a ball PMA, just gets me super motivated. And as we're talking, things are popping. And, you know, we usually record once a week for the Airey Bros. And then we do another podcast with our cousins. So usually in those times, that's when the wheels are spinning in my head and I'm thinking of things. But yeah, and I've always had those moments laying in bed and you don't want to get up and, oh, I should go write it down. No, it's so good. You'll remember it tomorrow. And then you don't remember it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I know exactly what you're talking about. And yeah, Jimmy, I mean, I know the exact Gary V video you're talking about because I've seen it and I'm like, he is 100% spot on. And I'm always watching videos like that too, you know, whether it's Gary Vee or other motivators or other, you know, content creators. I'm always reading books to try to understand better how things work, because, you know, I think these are people behind their keyboards, you know, that just, a lot of them just want to have that conversation. And if you're just like ignoring them, like, oh, I don't have to talk to you, or I don't have the time. Well, this person has the time to take 1 minute out of their day, or actually 10 minutes out of their day to watch a video, and then another minute to type a comment, and you can't take 30 seconds to respond to them. You know, that's where I think a lot of things come in with YouTube videos or I mean, social media, whatever. It's like, you know, yeah, things get overwhelming. Trust me, I get it. Like, you can't respond to every single person, but you could do your best to respond to those people. And especially in the early growing stages, like I told you on my old YouTube videos, like I would respond back to people. And then that way you even create more fans of those people. And they feel like you're actually, you know, personally talking to them, which is really cool.
Yeah. Outside of Gary Vee and, you know, his content and his books, you mentioned some other books. What books do you have any specific that people should check out, or you would recommend for people creating content?
Sure. I'm always big into like the entrepreneurial type books. I like Mark Cuban's book. I believe it's called, excuse me for 1 second, I have it right here. How to Win at the Sport of Business. If I can do it, you can do it too. This is Mark Cuban's book. That's a big one that I liked. I actually like, if you know who Dude Perfect is on YouTube, they do a lot of the sports videos. They're like huge, crazy sports trick shot videos. They wrote a book called Go Big, and having a go big mentality. That's a big one that I think is important. As well as there's another motivational book that I read last year. It was called Have Your Best Year Yet. I think I read it in 2019. It was How to Have Your Best Year Yet. And this book's actually behind me as well. Your Best Year Ever by Hyatt is what it's called. And it was just such a big, it was a how to set goals. And, you know, I've always been a goal setter, but it's kind of talking about how to better set goals and how to better think about your year and how to plan it. And, you know, I was just having this conversation the other day, is like, yeah, there have been a lot of bad things that happened this year, but like, I'm looking back at my year. I had a phenomenal year as far as a lot of things that have happened in my life, you know, and that's not to, you know, I'm somebody, like, I'm not trying to slight anybody who's had a horrible year, because there have been, you know, people have lost their businesses, people have lost their loved ones to COVID, but like, there's still a lot of good things that can come out of that year if you turn your mindset around. I'm big on mindset. I'm big on goal setting, and I'm big on, you know, learning about your craft. So, and I'm always constantly trying to find new books to read to understand, whether it's about YouTube, whether it's about marketing, whether it's about content creation or goal setting. Those are all things that I find super important.
Nice. What other books you got back there?
So I have, that's what I was trying to see. I was trying to see which other books. I have Grinding It Out, which is Ray Kroc book, which is about, he's the founder of McDonald's, and he talks about his whole story. It's kind of, I don't know if you've seen the movie The Founder, but it's kind of more, it's more from Ray Kroc's point of view. So I wanted to see, you know, both perspectives and see what he said and learn lessons from him, you know, who's created the biggest fast food chain in history. Like, there's a lot that you can learn from him. I also have a book called 6 Months to Six Figures, which is something that I'm learning. I've actually not finished that book yet, but I'm reading it and trying to understand how to create different revenue streams. So that's a big one. And then Super Fans, which is a Pat Flynn book. And Pat Flynn's another great content creator on YouTube. and he's talking about how to actually engage with people, how to learn from your fans, and how to create that super fan. You know, we talked about it before. You know, Rich, you talked a little bit about like if somebody says something bad in the comments, you have to kind of try to ignore that. But I do. But the thing that I find super cool is when you have these super fans, which is kind of what this book talks about a little bit, is they will jump to your aid. They will jump to your side. If somebody says something bad about you, oh, no. You don't say something bad about Fanco. You don't say something bad about Josiah. Even if sometimes I am, you know, sometimes or a lot of times, but, you know, I'm in the wrong. But like there are people who are just complete like jerks that are down there, and they'll jump to your aid, and they'll come to your support, which is something that book talks about. So those are all books. And then off camera, I'm staring at it now, but you can't see it, but I actually have a whole bookshelf of different books that I've just read. It's just every time somebody comes into the studio, they're like, "Did you read all those?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've read all of them. I'm a reader."
It's funny you talk about books and reading, and it's called back to Zach. Shout out Zach Bogle. But he posted, I think it was like a day or two ago, he said, I'm much better at buying books than I am at reading them.
He's hilarious. He is hilarious.
Yeah.
So Josiah, I don't know if you had this growing up, but growing up, I always had wrestling coaches that would say, the sport of wrestling is going to teach you skills for the rest of your life. You might not pick up on it now, but when you get older, you're going to pick up on it. And, you know, I'm 33 now, and I would say some of the biggest skills I learned from wrestling is 80% of success is just showing up. You just show up, you're going to get better. You're going to put time in. That's going to help you get to where you want to go. And just goal setting and the ability to know that if I set my mind to something, I'm going to be able to do it. That's what wrestling taught me. Do you have any of those kind of life skills that you take with you to this day that you kind of learned from wrestling?
Absolutely. One of them you mentioned, goal setting. I think that's a huge one. Is I was always somebody who had goals, but also realistic goals, you know, set up in the locker room. You know, for example, my goal in high school, and this is just kind of how I wasn't setting out to be a state champion on an individual level. On a team level, yes, but like, you know, for me that wasn't realistic with everything else I had going on in life. But I wanted to win at certain tournaments. You know, I wanted to place at certain tournaments. And for me, that was realistic. And I was able to accomplish those. So like setting realistic goals, but also ambitious, which I think is important because some of them were ambitious goals for sure. So goal setting, mindset was a huge thing. I mean, I remember, to be able to just the weight cutting stories I can tell you that are just like horrible. And I'm sure you guys have heard them, and you guys have had horrendous weight cutting stories. But we had a Navy SEAL come into our high school practice, which is super cool. And he would talk about kind of how he got through his Navy SEAL training, which I can only imagine what goes into the Navy SEAL training and what he goes through. But he talked about how he was able to get through that and visualize that and push through. And I think using some of those things is something I think about with the mindset. And really just hard work, you know, being able to outwork everybody that you can. Even at times whenever you don't have the skills or the expertise that other people have, and if you keep working hard, while also learning how to become better, because I don't necessarily believe that just straight up hard work is going to beat everybody, but hard work mixed with other talents, with constantly learning, with educating yourself, with kind of learning those different skills, you're going to be able to be more successful, which is something I think, the goals, the mindset, and the hard work is just something that is definitely carried on. While also thinking, you know, back to the great Gable quote about once you've wrestled, everything else in life is easy. Like, I just think on so many things, I'm like, all right, this is tough. This is a very tough time in my life, but like, man, it's not as tough as when I was cutting weight. I was cutting 20 pounds and trying to, you know, not being able to eat or drink anything like that. That's what I think back to a lot of times.
Yeah. It's funny you talk about cutting weight. I always thought I had developed some weird eating habits or tendencies because of wrestling. And then probably about 5 or 6 years ago, all of a sudden intermittent fasting became a thing. And I said, well, back in my day, we called it wrestling season, and it lasted 4 to 6 months.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've had some weird habits too. I mean, right now I cannot go anywhere without some sort of water bottle or drink in my hand because of you guys are the same way. You know exactly how it is. Like, they're just these weird habits that you kind of get into because of the wrestling and the weight loss.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead, Jim.
I was just going to ask if you had anything before we get into rapid fire.
I do have a couple things, just a couple quick little things. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the stop stalling. That's, we talk about hard work, and just sometimes in wrestling, you can just outwork people. And, I ran cross country and track in high school as well. And then I went on and had a scholarship for running. And so there are definitely times where people were better than me or stronger than me, and I would just outwork them, and, would be down 5-10 points going into the second or third period, and then would end up pinning someone. So we're huge fans of not stalling. And I think on the scholastic level, I talked with Jimmy about this. One of the things I would love to see is in order to take the official out of the stalling equation, I would love to see a push out rule in folk style wrestling, because I think that would just I've seen too many state championships won or lost because of referees inflecting themselves into the final seconds of a match. And that's just heartbreaking to see for a high school kid. So if you could just touch on the stop stalling a little bit and hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. So, like, as far as like you're talking about, I'd definitely like to see that it implemented. I'd also like to see riding time implemented in high school too, but that's another thing. But like, I think that, I mean, I just can't stand the stalling in wrestling when guys are just not working towards anything, or they're just stalling for stalling's sake. I'm like, let's do something. That's why a lot of people do freestyle more than folk styles, because they think, it kind of rewards action more than the inaction. And I'm all for that. And because nobody wants to watch boring wrestling. They want to watch excitement. They don't want to watch this stalling, And as far as like the branding, that's just something that I started even from the very beginning, is I knew that I needed some sort of catchphrase, whatever that was. And for me, even a life motto, I guess, stop stalling, stop just holding yourself back, and go for it. Do something, go big and go for it. Stop stalling.
Yeah, absolutely. Actions cure fear every time. So I could wholeheartedly agree with that. I'll take you one step further on the riding time. Not only would I like to see riding time implemented, I would like to see it go back to 1 point per minute of riding time.
I would not be against that either. I think that to me, it honestly does just make sense. It just makes total sense to do that.
Yeah, I think that would, if you get ridden for 4 minutes and you give up 4 points, I think that would incentivize action on the mat, and for people to get up out of the bottom and either get an escape or get an reversal. But Jimmy and I were always mat wrestlers. I wish I had looking back, I wish I had a coach that would encourage me to take top more often, because I probably would have ended matches a lot sooner than to get that reversal 2 points and then end up just putting the kid on the back. So yeah, I'm all for that. I think it would help the action progress. And, I hear the opposite of that. People speak against it, or like, well, that would just be boring. It would be 4 minutes of mat wrestling. And it's like, well, maybe it would be 4 minutes of mat wrestling, but then that person that didn't do anything for 4 minutes is certainly going to remember that moment. And then they're also going to get an earful on the bus ride home and the next day of practice. And they're probably not going to let that happen to them ever again.
You better believe it.
Yeah. 3 other things about your shelf there behind you: the hat, the card, and then the medal at the bottom. What are those?
Sure. So I'll start with which hat? This one?
Yep.
This is the first NCAA championships I was actually able to go to in Cleveland.
Right.
I went with my brother and a couple of friends of mine. So that's what that hat is. Then the card is actually from, I told you about my high school has a rich history of wrestling. This card is from Gene Bowman, who was a wrestler, in 1947, wrestled at Waynesburg College in the 50s, was an outstanding wrestler. It kind of goes on about the back of him here, but that's where the card is, or who the card is, I guess. And so I keep that on the back, just kind of remind me of my roots and where I came from as well.
Heck
And
yeah.
then the medal was actually there goes my hat, is my team state championship medal, which I'll pull up here too. So this, and another one I wanted to kind of remind me of my past and what I did, as a high school wrestler, team wrestling state champions in 2013. So just kind of keep it back there as a reminder of the great wrestling that was in my past, and just a lot of good memories for sure.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Were you guys AA or AAA?
We were AAA.
All right, right on.
Okay.
So we wrestled against teams like Franklin Regional, who at the time had like Spencer Lee, Michael Kemmer, and then our big opponents were Central Dauphin. They were our huge rivals when we got to the state level for sure. But just a lot of great wrestling teams all across PA.
So were you were Pittsburgh area?
Yeah. So
okay.
South of Pittsburgh.
All right. I went to UPJ for a hot minute. So Jody Schrittmatter was the coach there. So I used to go to Young Guns and see all those kids when they were young pups, and now they're multiple time NCAA champs.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had a couple friends go to UPJ, so that's cool.
All right.
Nice.
And one thing I wanted to ask was, I saw you made a video that you were either invited or had the opportunity to start up on Rockfin and you didn't take it. Can you just kind of go into what your thoughts are on that platform and why you decided just to keep it going the way you have it going?
Yeah, absolutely. So, that was a huge one, and I knew it would be a controversial video. I knew going into that it'd be a controversial video. And it actually turned out to be less controversial in the comments. But I still do get a lot of questions about it. And the first thing I'll say is, like, I like Rockfin. I think Rockfin's super cool. I use Rockfin. I'm a Rockfin subscriber. So, it's not like I'm anti Rockfin or anything like that. I'm a Flow subscriber. I'm a Rockfin subscriber. I use all the different wrestling sites. I use Intermat. I use OpenMat. Like, I think these are all great wrestling sites, but as far as Rockfin, I had talked to Martin. I had talked to the guys at Rockfin. They had kind of reached out to me to be a part of their platform. And this was back in time where I was thinking about how I'm going to move forward with the future of the Fanco Wrestling channel. And I had actually put a survey out for my audience, received so much feedback, good and bad, which I think is important, take those criticisms, not just like, oh, your channel's great, I love watching it. Like, okay, that's nice to hear, but like, seriously, what do you not like? And I was able to kind of grow from there and learn from there. And it was also around the time where I was thinking about launching a Patreon page. And I was thinking, what is the right way to go? Is it to join up on Rockfin and have people pay $9.99 a month? And yes, they get my content, but they get this other content too, which that's, for some people that's a pro, but then for me, it's like, well, also they're going on here and they could be leaving my content to look at these other wrestling creators, which is cool. It's good to, grow the sport of wrestling. And that's, again, why I'm for Rockfin. I think it's a great site, but, because of that. And I think that the other thing is that was one of the things that I felt like could label me as a sellout, is like, oh, you're just selling out to Rockfin, even though, like we talked about, Rich, like, it's like, you're not actually selling out. Like, you're trying to make a living for yourself, and this is a way to do it. But that always was in the back of my head. And it's something like, I think all of that mixed together, as well as I still find the revenue model for that very confusing. I've had it explained to me. I've had Martin explain it to me. I've done research. I'm a financial guy. Like, I really am. Like, I love reading about finance. I love stocks. I love all these things, but it was just too confusing for me. And I think a whole mix of that is kind of why I decided not to go there. And really the biggest thing too is a lot of people watching Fanco Wrestling, I kind of found out, is through that survey. They're there for me. They're there to learn about wrestling, for Fanco Wrestling and for the brand. They're not really always looking at all these other brands. And so because of that, I felt that the best way for the future of the channel was because of that. And again, not bashing Rockfin. I think Rockfin's doing good, but just for me personally, it just wasn't for me.
Yeah, I was going to ask how much of the cryptocurrency payout influenced your decision.
Is that really their thing?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I don't understand it either. Yeah, the last one I have before we get into rapid fire, I'm a little bit, I guess maybe Asperger's when it comes to college mascots. And so maybe you could help me understand where Campbell Camels came from in the heart of North Carolina.
It is so confusing. I believe the old mascot, I think it was something odd as well. It was like a cobra or something, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, so that was like back in like the 1900s. But the camel, so I still am not fully understanding of where it came from. This is my best guess, and this actually came up like maybe last week. I was just thinking on my own. This may have no merit. I'm not sure, but Campbell is a religious school, and one animal that comes up a lot of times in the Bible is a camel, because, you know, in the Bible, a lot of times people are traveling through these deserts. And so it's maybe has some religious meaning. It is they're carrying it in there. That's my best guess. I should know that. It's something I should know.
No, that makes sense. I geek out on mascots, and I could, roll through all obscure Division 2 and 3 mascots as well. It's just something that I don't know how to explain it or how I got to that point where we're at right now.
Rapid fire. I have two things on mascots. One, my high school mascot was a Big Mac, which is not the hamburger. It's an old like Scottish man, like kind of in the kilt. It was a Big Mac. So I thought you'd kind of laugh at that. Love one. It. And two, what is your favorite mascot? Because mine right now is the Jackrabbits. That's my favorite mascot. I think the camel's super cool too, but the Jackrabbit I've just always thought was awesome. So what's your favorite mascot?
Shout out to Damian Hahn, episode 50 of Airey Bros Radio.
Yeah, I like the unique ones. One that just jumps out at me when you ask me that question. The first thing that came to my mind was the Richmond Spiders. But in talking about unique ones and where the names come from, like the Banana Slugs is one that jumps out too. UC Santa Cruz. But we were big fans of Last Chance University. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I thought it was very interesting that a school in the middle of nowhere in Kansas their mascot was the Pirates.
Yeah.
I'm kind of basic with my mascots, and I would have to say, because we grew up, we were Panthers, so Panther guy, and Middlesex County College was the Colts. So those are my two. Nothing out there or anything like that.
Nothing crazy. Yeah. Like I said, a Big Mac in high school was always, everybody thought we were like hamburgers, but which I don't know, would have been kind of cool, but no.
Well, that you mentioned that reminds me of Edinburgh and the Fighting Scots. I like that mascot, and just like I like those unique ones that somehow like tie into the community or have like some sort of essence about them, and is not just some random thing where it's like, oh, we're the the Rams or the Panthers or whatever. Like I like those unique ones. So, but the one that really jumped out at me when you asked me that was the Richmond Spiders.
Yeah, definitely a cool mascot.
Yeah. Cool.
Josiah, are you a coffee drinker?
No, I can't stand coffee. I know, I'm sorry. It's just, I've never liked coffee. I don't even like the smell of coffee.
Do you like caffeine?
I like Mountain Dew, but I drink it maybe one every so often, but that's about it.
Shout out to Doug Schwab. Yeah, no, we're just I wouldn't say we're aficionados, but we do enjoy a good pour over. I'm something weird lately within the last year or two. If I'm not making it myself or I'm at a coffee shop, I get what you're saying. Like the smell of it, some lately has been kind of off-putting to me, which is weird. But yeah, we just always like to know what people's if they drink coffee in the morning, which will lead me into the next one. Do you have like a daily practice or a daily ritual, things that you do in the morning to kind of set you up daily for success, be it a, a journal, a checklist, meditation, anything like that?
I would say I don't have anything crazy that I do. I have the same like routine every morning. Not really, it's not really that exciting to talk about like my routine, but like certain things I do, I guess, are like, I always listen to like a podcast on the way to work and the way home from work because I have that commute. It's nice to be able to kind of think about certain things, whether it's an educational podcast or a wrestling podcast, or whatever it may be, a political podcast. Like that's just kind of what I like to listen to on my way to work. And so that a lot of times puts me in the right mindset to get right into my day.
Sweet.
And off of that goes right to the next question. What podcast you listening to? What music you listening to right now? Books, audiobooks, anything like that?
So I actually finished a long year of audiobooks of, I was on Audible for like a little bit, getting a lot of things, listened to like some fantasy things. I listened to like the Game of Thrones. I like listening to those rather than reading those because they are so long, but I still do like long books. Podcasts I'm listening to, I listen to Dave Ramsey a lot. I like listening to that financial advice. I listen to other political podcasts. I listen to if you're okay with me saying what I listen to, if I listen to Ben Shapiro, I like listening to him. So I listen to that often, and things along that line. I used to listen to a lot of FRL. I don't really as much anymore. And it's not because of any reason. It's mostly just because I don't have the time to listen to it. In college, I would always have one queued up on my podcast or on my app ready to listen to it. So while I was walking to classes. And so I'd listen to them a lot, which is actually, part of the other inspiration behind me. I'm like, oh, I could do this too. But I have a lot of that going on right now. And trying to think of any other interesting things that I have. Those are the main ones. I listen to some like YouTube advice podcasts too, that just to think more about YouTube, called Video Creators, I believe is the name of it, which is a very educational podcast for me to listen to that I like.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, I dabble in Mr. Shapiro a little bit. I'm not an everyday listener. Mostly that was spurred because of his appearances on Joe Rogan. But I think it's good to get it from both angles and have open discourse, because I think that's something that's unfortunately very lacking in our society and culture these days, and it's much needed. So, our previous guest was a big fan too. Last one, and you don't have to get too into it, or if you want to, you can. But do you have a favorite conspiracy theory, or one that you wish if there was one you could know the truth of?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. I guess off the top of my head, I would like to know if, maybe this is a vanilla bland one, but I'd like to know if like Sasquatch is real. I'd like to know that. Or even if you want to take it, I guess, a step further, I don't know if this is conspiracy or not, but like, I'd like to know if there are aliens out there. I don't know if you'd consider that conspiracy territory, but like, I believe there are. I really do. And I would like to know. And there have been a lot of things in the last couple of weeks that have kind of been hinting at something like that, like with giant whatever blocks being left out in the desert, with the frequency signal out in space. Like, I don't know. Are we getting closer?
Yeah. Funny story about that. I was actually in Moab that weekend that first monolith was discovered.
Are you
I didn't
serious?
see it, but I was there. I was running a 50K, and as we were heading back, it like popped up in the news feed that this thing. I was like, oh, we got to turn around. We were this close. So we just wish we would have got the update, known that it was there, because we would have went and found it. But yeah, I mean, Bigfoot's definitely, one of the things. Are actually the podcast that we're putting out tonight. Midnight Mike came on. He does the Our Big Dumb Mouth podcast, and they do a lot of alien stuff and cryptology. So he's big into Bigfoot and that sort of stuff, or Sasquatch. So I will recommend check out David Pilates.
Okay.
He does. He's written like 9 or 10 books at this point now. He started off as a Bigfoot researcher when he retired as a detective, and then got into all of the people that go missing in national parks and the strange occurrences and the coincidences, commonalities that surround all of these missing people, and he's plotted them out and made all these different charts. But like I said, he started off as a Bigfoot researcher. So he's written some books about Bigfoot, and the podcast that we're putting out tonight, our guest, we get into Bigfoot and cryptology. And I don't know, you fairly somewhat close to West Virginia, the West Virginia border.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Mothman?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So we get into Mothman too.
Oh boy, that's exciting.
Yeah, because Mothman is found in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and Jimmy and I grew up in Point Pleasant, New Jersey.
Oh, right. Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Josiah, where can all the fans find you if they want to track you down and you want them to track you down? Where would you like to direct them?
The best place to find me is on YouTube. If you search Fanco or Fanco Wrestling, or youtube.com/Fanco Wrestling, that is the best place to find me. I am not on any social media because I always think of it, just coming off of the Christmas season. I said, I guess I belong on the island of misfit toys because I'm a social media guy who doesn't like or use social media. So the best place to find me is definitely on YouTube.
Awesome. Well, congratulations for not being able to be a social media influencer and content creator and not really being on social media. I am envious for a lot of different reasons. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate the conversation. It was great to connect and hear all about what you got going on and what's going on at Campbell. So appreciate your time and thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Jimmy. I had a great time and, hope to talk to you guys soon and best of luck in everything that you're doing as well.
Thanks, Josiah. You're the man.
Is there any Campbell home matches this year? How's that going to be?
We have one home match coming up middle of January against App State and Gardner Webb. Other than that, we're going to be away. We're going to be on the road the rest of the time. Our first home match is January 1st. First wrestling duel of the entire season is Campbell versus UNC. So that'll be super fun. But other than that, we will be home in mid-January.
Fans?
No. Unfortunately, no fans unless something changes, which, we're following our university guidelines, following all the guidelines we're allowed to follow.
Cool. Will it be live streamed? Can we check it out?
We will be live streaming somewhere. We're still figuring out the logistics of what we're able to do with our TV schedules and everything. I wish I could say we're streaming here and for certain, but that's as much details as I have right now.
No worries. Thanks for your time. Appreciate the information and best of luck with you.
Thank you
guys.
Have a good night.
Take care.